film it.
She said there were calls somewhere where you can just go pick it up.
This bench, the bench really looks like it's from a Rolls Royce or something. It's just, yeah, you see, it's such a fancy bench. We have time, so maybe about a minute, because I don't want anyone, if anyone's still on their way, and yeah, it would be bad to start. Maybe we can start. Oh, okay, yeah. My watch is slower than that, so maybe dinner is by that clock, so that's the stop times before dinner. So good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you all. I'm Robert Buxton, and yeah, thanks for having me here. And I'm very grateful to Haley, who changed our regular meeting time. So I went on a little trip with my family to Mexico, and we had a great time. But as a good citizen, I packed my electric piano to practice. I have one that folds in half, and you can imagine that with the 100% humidity and 2 toddlers bouncing around, how much I practiced. It wasn't a whole lot, I regret to say. But something interesting happened to me. I'm going to start by improvising something as usual. And there's a place in Winston-Salem that asked me if I would play background music, improvised background music for a silent film. And I thought, sure. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I thought it was going to be a 15-minute Charlie Chaplin thing. No, they said, actually, we're going to do Buster Keaton's The General, which is almost an hour and a half. So, well, I already said yes, so no, I'm kidding. I'm glad. It's an interesting project. So I want to improvise something that's probably going to go with that in late September when I do that. So, because I'm practicing already by putting the movie on my iPad and just making it silent, because it's a silent movie, and just seeing what comes out. So let's see what happens now. I'm just imagining the movie. You know, it's there's a lot of like comic things to it. There's a train chase scene, and maybe a little ragtime should be in there, just a little, I don't know. So let's see what comes out. This is what I've been working on with that movie. So this is music that should accompany The General by Buster Keaton. I hope that sounds a little bit like something that should go with a silent movie. That's what I was going for. Well, now I'm going to play, today I'm just going to play some short pieces. You know, I told you I was in Mexico for like 2 weeks and fingers feel a little jello-like. So I'm going to start with a couple pieces I've played for you before, probably a while back. And what's nice about revisiting pieces I've played in the past is how I find new things in it each time. I mean, you find new things in pieces every time you play it, hopefully, but something I have, the last time I played these was maybe a year ago or more, so you can hear it differently. And I'm going to play the C-sharp minor Nocturne by Frédéric Chopin. So this is an early work of his, and he wrote it as a study piece for his second concerto, which oddly enough he wrote before his first concerto. That's the music historian's business. I don't know why they did it that way, but that's the case, yeah. So it has some of the themes of that concerto. He wrote it for his cousin who was learning the concerto, and so he did this study piece for that. That's kind of, in a lesser way, I just improvised a study piece for what I'm going to try to do for a whole hour-and-a-half movie. So, with Buster Keaton. So, what I find is there are a couple distinct features in this piece. By the way, Nocturne is a piece for the evening. We're not quite there yet, sorry, wrong timing. But John Field, who was an Irish composer, I think he was the first or one of the first people to write nocturnes for the piano. And he's a wonderful composer, not played as much as he should, so maybe one day I'll learn some of his music and play it here. But so, with Chopin, I think everything he wrote sounds very Polish. It's infused with Polish folk music or Polish folk feeling, because he was so deeply Polish, and he spent most of his life, unfortunately, living in exile, and he could not go back. He lived in Paris, which was not a bad place to be in exile, but still, it wasn't home. And so you hear that, like, there's some parts that are explicitly Polish sound. They sound like folk music, like. And then also you'll hear the influence of Italian opera, bel canto opera, because he was also obsessed with the music of Bellini especially, and would go hear all his operas in Paris. So with a Bellini aria, what you need is a good accompaniment like this. And then the right hand in the Chopin acts like a soprano prima donna, you know. So here's the piece. This is the Nocturne by Chopin in C-sharp minor. Thank you. Here's another piece that's also a bit on the depressing side. Recently, my wife confronted me about this. She said, "Why is everything you play so depressing? Do you pick things in major keys ever?" Maybe not. I'm a pretty cheerful person. I don't understand it. Well, this is the Ständchen, or Serenade by Schubert, and it's for voice. I can't sing in German, of course, so this is Liszt's arrangement of it. And I've played this also for you probably about a year ago or something. Actually, these two pieces I return to if I've been away from the piano for too long. But in all seriousness, this piece is from Schubert's Schwanengesang, which is a set of songs or lieder. And he wrote it at the very end of his life, of his short life. He died at 31 only, and struggled with a terrible illness that he knew his time was limited. But what's striking to me about Schubert, and what's so tragic about Schubert, is he doesn't hit us over the head with it, really. Take, for example, Beethoven. They were contemporaries. They're just different. I love them both, as much as each other, but Beethoven's response maybe to tragedy would be more like that. And if you think about it, Beethoven's struggle was with a condition that wasn't lethal. He had a hearing loss. But Schubert, rather, he had a much worse illness. But so Beethoven has this kind of reaction to his fate. But Schubert, and what's so striking is that he wrote this really as he was dying, and he writes this. To me, it's as if he's just sitting in one of the coffee houses in Vienna and just watching people go by. And it's bittersweet, and it's not raging at anything. It's just that there's a bittersweet melancholy quality to it. But I don't know, it's a little bit like laughter through tears or something. And I think that understatedness is what makes Schubert really, at least in this piece, because the next one I'm going to do is not understated, of Schubert. And it reminds me of an old joke. Forgive me if I've told you this many times, but it's an old 19th century joke about the difference between German culture and Austrian or Viennese culture. You speak the same language, yes, but they couldn't be more different. Berlin and Vienna. So in Berlin or Hamburg or wherever, things are very, very serious, but there's hope. There's hope. And unfortunately, in Vienna, it's the other way around. Things aren't so serious, but there's no hope. And that's really, I think, how Schubert comes across sometimes. So here is the Serenade by Schubert, arranged by Liszt. Liszt does not change it too much because there really isn't much to change. But he adds a third verse and does this beautiful echo effect, which I'll show you now. This is Liszt's creation, or addition. I wish I had 3 hands, it would make it easier to do that, but that's Liszt's edition, and it's just a beautiful thing. So here is the piece. Schubert, Liszt, Ständchen, or Serenade. Thank you. And next, I'm going to do another Liszt arrangement of Schubert. I don't remember if I played this for you before. Maybe I didn't. So I learned it, I think, right before I went to Mexico, and then had to relearn it.
Doesn't matter, play it again.
Okay. Well, yeah, I guess I'm just justifying things to myself. My goal would be to have a whole different program every time I'm here, but this thing is not fast enough. So this is the Erlkönig by Schubert, arranged by Liszt for solo piano. And Schubert wrote it as a very young man. He was like 18 years old or something when he wrote it. And it is terrifying for many reasons. One, it's terrifying to play. It has these repeated notes. It's notoriously difficult technically. I should have drank more coffee before it helps with getting those repeated notes. But it's terrifying because the subject matter of the piece is terrifying. It's almost like straight out of a horror movie. And that genre was popular. And I didn't have movies then, but when was Frankenstein written by Mary Shelley, or when was The Legend of Sleepy Hollow written? It was all around this time, the early 19th century. So this is about 1815, I think, when this was written, when Schubert wrote this. And the Erlkönig, a good singer can actually change their voice, like Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau. He would change the quality of his voice because there are 4 characters in this piece. One singer has to convey those 4 characters. And one is the narrator who tells us what's going on. There's a father, there's a young boy, the son, and then there's this strange supernatural, maybe a ghost named the Erlkönig, who lives in the forest. I was reading, what does the word Erlkönig mean? It might come from Old Danish and mean elf king, but it's not even clear that that's what it is. So it's this weird supernatural figure. Okay.
König is king.
Is what?
König is
Yeah,
king.
König is king, yeah. Earl, elf, it's from the same, root. But it's not clear. What I read is that people think that's what it means, but it's some kind of king, right? So the text, which I won't sing, I'm telling you all about that. I won't sing it. You didn't want to hear it if I could. It's by Goethe. If I said that, Goethe, you have to say it. Ja, sehr gut. And the text or the story of this piece that's conveyed through the words is that there's this young boy who's very sick, and the father's taking him to a doctor by horse carriage in the middle of a storm in the middle of the night. So it's terrifying, and you hear it from the very beginning, first measures. You can hear the rain, the thunder. I was driving in a thunderstorm on Friday. I thought about this, little different context. I was trying to get to a concert on time, but still, and you can hear the horse hooves and everything, and the wind and the trees, going about, so. And that goes on throughout the piece. It's terrifying. And you can hear the thunder and lightning and such. So it's mostly a dialogue between the father and the son. And the son keeps telling the father in German, mein Vater, he says, I hear this ghost talking to me and telling me to come to him. And that's the Erlkönig. The Erlkönig represents death, of course. And so it's... that's the son's part, and that's where he's singing, mein Vater, mein Vater. The father keeps responding reassuringly, saying, you're just imagining things. Mein Sohn, mein Sohn. It's like... you hear that it's a different tone, even. And Liszt somehow makes it in different registers so that it sounds like a different character. The oddest part is when the Erlkönig speaks, and the whole mood dissipates and becomes almost sunny. So the question is, why, when this terrifying ghost is singing, the music becomes almost cheerful? And the reason I think it is a quote from Alfred Brendel, who was a great Schubert interpreter. He said when Schubert writes in a minor key, which is, it represents reality. Because for Schubert, reality was cold and harsh. So that's in the music too. When Schubert writes in a major key, like the Erlkönig's part, it represents dreams and illusions, because that was a sort of escapism for Schubert. Think about it. He lived this piece, that he was constantly, probably felt like he was communicating with death. At the very end of the piece, by the way, it doesn't end loud. Most of the piece is loud, but it ends softly. Music doesn't have to end loud, you know? And the narrator tells us that the boy died on the horse carriage. So it's absolutely terrifying, and I'm sorry, I try to keep things light and joke around, but there's nothing light about this. And unfortunately, life is not always so light. So this is Schubert's Erlkönig, arranged by Liszt for piano solo. Good luck to you, good luck to me, because tricky music. piece and a piece like that. There are people who say, I love classical music, it's so calm. Not necessarily. Another thing is, this is famous as being a very technical piece, and it has technical challenges. There's versions for different instruments. There's a violin solo version by Ernst, which I've been listening to, and it's incredible that this virtuoso violinist Ernst somehow arranged that for solo violin, unaccompanied violin. But I think of a quote from Liszt, who did this arrangement. He was teaching a student. The student was playing one of the polonaises of Chopin. And Liszt said to him, look, I don't care how fast and loud you can play those octaves. What I want from those octaves is to see the Polish cavalry marching ahead. That's the point, I think. And it's sometimes I have to remind myself that when you're practicing a piece like that, it can turn into, okay, it's like weightlifting, you know, I'm working the muscles, but it's not what it's about. And Liszt knew that, obviously. I mean, Liszt lived that more than anyone, I think. So here's another Liszt arrangement. And with these arrangements of Liszt, what I especially love is that he proves, I think, absolutely proves that the piano is a singing instrument. It's more like a cello than something you beat with mallets, like well, that's not to insult percussion instruments, because a good percussionist will make it sound lyrical and musical. But that's, you know, there are people who say, oh, the piano is a percussive instrument, but Liszt made it speak in these arrangements, I think, especially. So this is, now I'm going to play one of Liszt's arrangements of Robert Schumann, similar name, Schubert, Schumann, but different. And this is the Widmung, which means dedication, from the Myrtles, a song cycle. This is the first of those pieces. The text is by Friedrich Ruckert. I won't sing it, don't worry. So Schumann wrote this whole song cycle as a wedding present for his wife, Clara. I was wondering, my first thought was, well, why didn't he, go out and get something like a nice chandelier or something? But really, can you imagine getting this as a wedding present? I don't know, it's beyond belief. And their path to getting married was tough because Clara's, she was a great musician herself. And her father, Friedrich, was Robert Schumann's piano teacher and did not approve of their getting married at all. And it took some time. By the way, Schumann had just flunked out of law school. Maybe that helped him because he learned something there. He went through the courts and they legally got the ability to marry. And finally marry after some years. And Schumann writes this piece. And this piece sounds like what it feels like to be in love. It's that sounds like the lyrics of a 1950s doo-wops. I don't know, but it just has the feeling of adrenaline or butterflies in your stomach, like. And with Schumann's music, I believe it can never be too comfortable because he struggled with bipolar disorder. So with his music, it's either on one extreme or the other. It's always on the edge of something. I really believe that. And so the internet can be a useful place and can also be a very weird and not so good place. And I post videos of my playing online. If you like YouTube and Facebook, please connect. We can be, quote, friends. I know we're friends in real life, but there's that, in Facebook lingo, friends, So I posted this on one of those. One of the rules they tell you when you post things on the internet, don't read the comments. So I read the comments, and somebody wrote about me playing this piece too fast. And then I got another comment to that comment that said, no, it's not too fast, but the rhythm is weird, all over the place, bad, bad, bad. I thought about this for a while because sometimes criticism has, that you can learn something. And I decided I didn't agree with it because I think with Schumann, as I said, I don't think Schumann can be too settled. He wasn't. And this piece is not. He's about to marry the love of his life. They were a power couple, by the way. I know that's another modern modern term, I don't love it, but they really were. Like, they were both brilliant musicians. And would he write something like this? That's too polite, maybe.
Was that a song too?
It was originally.
a
It's
lead.
supposed to be sung.
I heard my mom sing that lead.
Really?
That's what I thought of.
Yeah, that's what it is. You're right. And this Liszt, I'm playing Liszt's version because, I don't sing. So I would have loved to have heard your mom sing it. That's, wow. In German, right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Aber natürlich.
Ja, sehr gut. Oh, very good. Yeah, it's what they told me. When I went to Germany, people told me, and now I realize it was a passive, well, what's the word? It was not really a compliment, it was a passive-aggressive compliment. They said, your pronunciation is perfect and everything else is terrible in your German to me, they told me, my speaking German. So I made the mistake once of playing Schumann in a very sedate manner for my Russian piano teacher. And as usual, he stopped me after 3 seconds. No. I played like I just played, and he said, it sounds like you are drinking coffee, reading newspaper. This is not Schumann. Schumann's music on fire. I said, yeah, and I learned something from that. Never play Schumann, settled. Okay, so here's Liszt's arrangement of Schumann, Widmung, or dedication. pretty short. And this is a piece by, well, it's called Sicilienne by Maria von Paradis. It's a violin piece originally. I've adapted it a bit to play alone on the piano. There's one problem with the piece, and that is that it's actually not by Maria von Paradis. She was a wonderful composer who lived in late 18th century Vienna, but she didn't write it. This is a forgery. You have that in, doesn't mean it's bad. You have that in paintings too. There'll be a Rembrandt that's supposedly a Rembrandt, but someone discovers that it's actually a forgery, someone else did it. This is actually by Samuel Duszkin, who was a 20th century Polish violinist who ended up living in the US. And he claimed it was by her. This was done by a lot of people at the time, like Fritz Kreisler, but I'm going to play some Kreisler next. There's a reason for that, I think, is that if, let's say I do write music, maybe one day I'll play it when I work up the courage, but if I tell you, I'm going to play something I wrote, well, what if instead I told you, actually I found it in a library somewhere, and it's by Vivaldi? You might take more interest to it. I think that, in other words, I think that's the logic behind what these people like Duszkin and Kreisler would do when they claimed that a piece was by someone else, not them. So a Sicilienne, obviously the roots of it are in Sicily. It's a rhythm that goes bum, ba-bum, bum, ba-bum, long, short, long, short, long. There are dozens of examples of this in music, like Mozart or Schubert. That's a Sicilian, or Rachmaninoff. There it is. Even this. Sicilian. It is. It's a little bit early. It's odd to hear that in August. So that's what it is. And the Sicilian, I played it somewhere and a lady came to me. She said, look, I have Sicilian roots. It didn't sound Sicilian at all to me. Not necessarily, but I'm just saying that rhythm and the roots of that, it's a dance originally, are from Sicily. And Rousseau wrote about it and described it as a very nostalgic rhythm. And it's true. I think that all Sicilians, they have a feeling of nostalgia to them, especially this one. I came across the idea to play this because there's a violinist who played this in his later years, Ivry Gitlis. He played this on the violin just so magnificently, I said to myself, I have to play that piece, even though it's not a piano piece. So here is the Sicilian by Maria von Paradis, except it's really by Samuel Duszkin. Oh, it's just called Sicilian. I can write it down for you. You'll find it. It's a lot of people play it on the violin.
Okay.
And I learned it because this is, again, it's from my intent. I'm playing it out of my intense desire to switch instruments to the violin. It's not going to happen because I'm too lazy to do that, ultimately, to switch instruments. And then the next piece as well, I'm going to play, this is a very familiar violin piece that I just decided, oh, well, why not? I'll just play it on the piano. Schon Rosmarin by Fritz Kreisler. And it's a waltz. It's a Viennese waltz. You know the difference between a regular waltz and a Viennese waltz. And this is not a joke. A regular waltz is... But a Viennese waltz is a little more hiccupy. It's... It's got a little... You know, it's like you're walking along and you step on a stone. It has that to it. It's not so smooth. It shouldn't be. And Fritz Kreisler was the most typical Viennese. I told you that joke about Schubert and Beethoven. There's a difference between Austrian and German culture. You know, there's this almost happy-go-lucky quality in Kreisler, but behind it is also a feeling of sadness and nostalgia. You can see pictures of him, and he just looked like this typical La Belle Epoque person with this mustache and, I don't know, facial expression. And what's horrible and it's tragic is that, you know, he suffered so much from anti-Semitism. He was Jewish, and his music and he was the embodiment of Vienna, and yet that culture rejected him in a very ugly way. Well, but fortunately for him, he and his family came to the US, and he had a lot of success as a performer. Although he didn't like to practice. Maybe I've told you this story about he was playing with Rachmaninoff in Carnegie Hall and he messed up. And he's over here, Rachmaninoff's playing over here. Rachmaninoff played piano, physically looked like a block of wood when he played. And he could be a very doer person as well. And Kreisler was the opposite. He was just this, you know, happy guy. And he gets lost and he walks over to Rachmaninoff in the concert and whispers, "Where are we?" And Rachmaninoff snarls at him, "Carnegie Hall." Didn't help very much. So here's the Schon Rosmarin by Fritz Kreisler. I don't even know if it really works on the piano. I'm sorry. I wish I could play violin. I'm telling you, I wish I could be a singer, a violinist, so many things. It's just, I like to pretend to be something I'm not. Trust me, it's a little better on the violin. So I want to play you now the third prelude from Gershwin's Prelude. Some of these pieces I'm preparing a program to play at a synagogue in Raleigh, and I'm going to play majority composers of Jewish background, including Samuel Dushkin, some Mendelssohn, and then Chrysler, and then and Gershwin. And Gershwin, like Chrysler, was the embodiment of the culture he lived in. Actually, but his parents were Russian Jewish immigrants. And he even changed his name. His original name was Gershowitz, and he changed to George Gershwin. And he wrote Rhapsody in Blue and all these Americana pieces. So with Gershwin's music, he famously incorporated the blues and jazz. And this is from 1926. It's the height of the Roaring '20s. But there's also something I hear in this that maybe is not talked about so much, klezmer music. I hear it in this. Listen a little bit. It's there. And maybe the opening of Rhapsody in Blue, which is that clarinet solo, that also evokes to me klezmer music. So here is George Gershwin, the third prelude. You know what this reminds me of is like newsreels or old cartoons in movie theaters that they would show before I was born. It just has that feeling to it. We're not in the 19th century anymore. We ain't in Kansas anymore, right? Like Dorothy, did she say ain't? I don't know. Yeah, we're not in Kansas anymore. Here it is. Gershwin. Thank you. And I like to play Gershwin and pair Gershwin with William Grant Still, who did something very similar to Gershwin in that he incorporated the blues and popular idioms, American idioms, into his classical writing. But there's a similarity between Still and Gershwin. There's also a big difference. He was from Mississippi, not Queens, and that's different. If music could have a humidity level, this piece would be very humid. You know the Spanish moss that hangs off of trees in the deep south? I was in Jacksonville, Florida playing a couple months ago, and I noticed it, and I told the concert organizer in the car, I said, look at all this, so beautiful. He said, you like it? I said, yes. Why don't you take some home with you? He said. I looked it up. I Googled it, and I'm glad I didn't because apparently there are some bugs that live in those things. Now, this is Summerland by William Grant Still. He wrote it in the 1930s. And he had a unique style, as did Gershwin. But you're going to hear some blues and maybe a little jazz in there too. And William Grant Still, I mentioned how Gershwin suffered from discrimination being Jewish. Still also suffered from discrimination. He was African American. And for example, his operas had big success in their first performances and mysteriously were not performed again after that. And so he is a composer I really strongly believe needs to be heard more than he's heard. So wrote many symphonies and operas and piano pieces and such. So here's Summerland. It's a very calm piece. I'm not always the calmest person, so Maybe one more, is that, okay, yeah, because well, I'll be back sooner than later because this is the fourth Monday. I was saying it feels like the third Monday, but it's a fourth
And
because,
you're going back to the third month.
yeah, we're gonna go back, so then whatever I was wanting to play more, now I'll just save it for then. How about that? It's only a few weeks away. So, yeah, I'll be here, I'll be playing. So, I'll close with some gospel as I always do, and this is going to play Peace in the Valley by Thomas A. Dorsey. Not to be confused with Tommy Dorsey, the big band leader, who was great too, very different style. And Thomas Dorsey wrote this, he was on a train going through Ohio, and it was 1941, and he got the news that the Second World War was starting, that Pearl Harbor had been attacked. And the music, the words and music just came to him. And he sort of invented African American gospel in the 20th century, really. And he and Mahalia Jackson did. And the interesting thing about him, he was from Georgia originally, and he was a blues musician, a popular musician, and people called him Georgia Tom. And he completely rejected that old self and became a new, a gospel, purely gospel musician. It's kind of interesting. Moved to Chicago. So here is the piece. There are many recordings of this. Everyone has sung it. Thomas Dorsey himself, even Elvis maybe. Yeah, so,
I have a personal question
Okay.
to ask you. Did you write a song or a piece for your wife as a wedding present?
not for a wedding present, but I have here, I do write music and it's kind of lives in my desk drawer.
Well,
Yeah, I've written,
Give us some of that.
okay, maybe next time. How about it? Yeah, good, okay,
And then you
yeah.
can tell your wife it was for her.
That's exactly right. I like your thinking. I did not, I should have. The right answer, did I write a piece for my wedding? I should have.
You still can.
I still can, yeah, it's never too late too. So here is, what was I gonna, Peace in the Valley, yeah. All right, here. Thanks for coming out today. One more time.
called Prayer. She's a violinist and her pianist. So come if you can.
We will, we'll be there.
7:30, Saturday night.